What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler, Justis is joining me because, hey, there's some not really Packers news to talk about. Justis, I know you're obviously out there on the West Coast. You're a big Emerald City Spectrum fan. All Seahawks, all Seattle news all the time. We've got a report from a Corbin Smith about the Packers potentially trying to acquire DK Metcalf, who, look, I know you've been pretty vocal about wanting to get DK in green and gold. What do you make of this report? What do you think the likelihood is? And let's just start with, do you believe any of this?
So I woke up to it.
Yeah.
Was very happy about it.
Of course you were.
Mentions blow up because, I've been the DK guy.
Yeah, you've been driving that train.
Yep, this whole offseason. And then Corbin Smith continued to talk.
He kept tweeting.
Exactly. Things began to seem less likely. So the original thing was just, hey, the Packers are interested in DK Metcalf. Checks out a lot, right?
1,000,000,000% checks. Yep.
They need a field stretcher. They have the cap space, right? He checks both of those boxes in a free agency class that doesn't have a ton of speed, and a draft class that isn't very strong at the receiver position. Then he said, it probably would take the 23rd overall pick, a young receiver, and a day 3 selection. I'm like,
that's when I was out. I was out right there.
That's not happening. And then he continued and said, yeah, well, the Packers think it's fine to trade the 23rd pick because they'll get similar compensation for Jair Alexander. Jair Alexander is much closer to being a cap casualty than he is to being traded for a first-round pick, man.
To quote Annie Hall, excuse me, I have an appointment back on Earth. Look here. The idea being, like, you just laid out some of the reasons that it makes sense, right? And I do think it does conceptually. The one area where I'm kind of scratching my head, not that there's much on offer, because as you said, in a free agent class, that type of player is certainly not available. Mm-hmm. When Brian has dipped his toe into free agency, it has been guys come up. DK is heading into the last year of his second deal. Packers would essentially have to sign him to an extension and or his third deal. That just seems very un-Gutekunst-like in most ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, that's when guys are available in trades, right? It's not going to be,
especially heading into their final year. Yeah,
we just gave him a signing bonus. By the way, he's on the trade market, right? It's always, I mean, look back at the AJ Brown trade. It's coming on an expiring deal, all that type of stuff. Right. But yeah, I mean, he's on the younger side still. I mean, he's only like 27.
Yep.
So, you figure you're only trading for a contract anyway. Like, you're trading for one more contract. That's really what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that you can control. So I don't think that's too crazy. It's just the compensation thing. I mean, at most a second, I would say. Yeah. Right.
Even honestly, Justis, even that feels rich. You know what
I mean? If we're throwing in the young player, right? Like, hey,
because that's the report, right? That it's a premium pick and a player, a young receiver. Like, if you're throwing in Dobbs, there's no freaking way I can see them throwing in a second.
Yeah.
Like, that just feels real rich.
Yeah. We will see what happens. But I'm not buying a 1 plus a receiver.
No chance.
Plus a day 3 pick. It's just not happening.
What about the player himself? Now, obviously, you said there's not a lot of this on offer out there. And he would fit a major need in Green Bay with Watson set to miss as much time as he is. How do you see him fitting into the Packers offense if they were able to acquire him?
Yeah. So let's start with the baseline of what the Packers usually look for at the position and why. If you look at the guys who have played for LaFleur, on a per snap basis, right, the guy is usually like 207 pounds. That's massive for a wide receiver at the NFL level because LaFleur is a run-first play caller. I mean, that's what he is.
Especially this past year.
Right. And the exceptions to that rule are like the team being forced to play Randall Cobb because Aaron Rodgers wanted to play with Randall Cobb and openly saying like, I never would have made this deal. Roster. He wouldn't be on this roster if I had my choice.
He literally said it into a microphone.
Yeah. So lets you know how they feel about that situation. And you say, why can't they play small guys, right? Okay, when Christian Watson went down, they had to have Bo Milton as the field stretcher so that everything didn't get compressed, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happened there? Oh, they weren't able to run the football.
They can't run,
right?
especially to that side, no doubt.
Yeah.
Mm.
So you can have a Jaden Reed, but Jaden Reed is your designated small. That's it. He's going to be your motion guy. He's going to be the dude faking the end rounds. He's going to be the guy out of the backfield who motions in and runs little bubbles out of it. But that's your one guy. And you get that one guy. Everyone else has to be big. Now, here's the problem. You're running into a situation. Watson is down. You need a field stretcher. The only bodies that you can add to your team, unless you're trading Jaden Reed, right? You have to have a big field stretcher. You look into the free agency class. There's a lot of wide receivers. It's a lot of guys around the age of 30 outside of like Higgins.
Yeah.
And none of them are really take the top off the defense type of guys. And you look at this draft class, it's a whole lot of the same issues. And there's not a whole lot of high-end talent at the receiver position. It's why it was smart that the Packers 2 years ago swung twice at the position. It was a deep class at wide receiver. That's why you do it, so that in 2025, when it's a weaker wide receiver class, you're not, putting the vice grips and having to thread the needle in terms of positional needs.
Talent acquisition at a position, right.
I think that's why at APC we've kind of talked about stuff, and I thought DK was always a pie in the sky type of thing because it's never been official that he's like even been on the market, right?
Yeah.
DK's never requested a trade, stuff like that. The Seahawks are in a bad salary cap position.
That's the one thing, right? And plus, to add to that, a little fuel there. Like earlier this week, John Schneider was asked point blank about DK Metcalf and his future on the team, and I mean, he was very brusque. I would say, it was not like he was mad or anything like that, but he's on the team, big strong wide receiver.
Well, they're in a weird spot, right? So to kind of set the table for where Seattle is at, Pete basically fell on the sword for John Schneider, right? And he was like, hey, get rid of me. Give John Schneider a fair shake, right?
Yep.
They kind of run it back. They fumble at the offensive coordinator position, right? Guys back in college football. Stuff didn't work out. But the Seahawks also didn't make the playoffs. And the way that their cap structure is right now, I mean, you kind of have to decide, like, hey, do we shave some of this and just, like, try to run it back? And we're basically betting that the offensive coordinator was the difference on whether we made the playoffs or not. And if we get, an average offensive coordinator, we'll make the postseason
and make some improvements up front on the line. Like,
that's
a big
or do we blow this up?
Yeah,
like that's
and really turn the page with a new head coach, head coach, etc. Yeah.
Because if you're listening to the Seahawks are like something like $20 million over the cap right now, so they're not New Orleans, right? They're not in that situation,
right?
But they're not in a good spot to add talent this offseason. So it is interesting. I mean, it would make sense why they would maybe say, like, all right, obviously paying 3 wide receivers all this money. Jackson Smith and Jigba is your slot only, and he's a first-round pick, right?
Yep.
Maybe we need to restructure the team in a different way. I could see that, and that's kind of why he's always kind of been in the back of mind.
Well, he's in the front of mind today, thanks to young Corbin over there in Seattle. Or actually, I think the byline was in Indianapolis, so if I see him here, I'll ask him what's up.
Find him at that Starbucks. You know what to do.
I know.
It's on site, Nagler.
On site. No question about it. Justis, thanks so much, man. I know you've written about this for APC. I'll link to it in the description of this video. Thanks as always for the time, man.
Yes, sir.